I'll now invite Her Excellency Ms. Nosiviwe Noluthando Mapisa-Nqakula, Speaker of the National Assembly, South Africa, for her keynote address. 7 minutes, Madam. Please.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Honorable Chair. Your Excellency, Honorable Ompila, Speaker of the Lok Sabha, Your Excellencies, Honorable Kant, the Shepherd of India's G20 presidency, Your Excellency, Mr. Duarte Pacheco, President of the Interparliamentary Union, Honorable Speakers of the National Assemblies and Council of Provinces, Senates, and all honorable members of Parliament present in this summit. Your Excellencies, Charlotte Elizabeth Whitton, the first woman mayor of Canada's major city, Ottawa, would not have put it better in describing women's struggles and difficulties when she said, and I quote, "Whatever women do, they must do twice as well as men to be thought half as good," close quote. This means that no matter how good and meticulous women are, they are always doubted and regarded as perpetual incompetent, subhuman beings who must always prove their worth for existence. In the same wavelength, in his opening speech at the first conference of Mozambican women held on the 4th of March 1973, former president of Mozambique, the late Samora Machel, noted that, and I quote, "Women are the most oppressed, humiliated, and exploited beings in society. A woman is even exploited by a man who is himself exploited, beaten by the man who is lacerated, humiliated by a man who is crushed under the boot of his boss or settler. How can the revolution triumph, therefore, without the liberation of women?" Close quote. Moreover, if we also consider the basic needs for the revolution to be continued by the new generation, how can we ensure the revolutionary education of the generation which will carry on our work if mothers, first educators, are marginal to the revolutionary process? More than 50 years later, since President Machel's groundbreaking speech, the living standard of women and their societal standing has not improved to the acceptable proportional levels. I wish to congratulate you, Speaker of India, for your courage in amending your pieces of legislation, thereby paving the way for women to have full participation in decision-making in your country. Your Excellencies, achieving the goal of equal participation of women and men in decision-making will provide a balance that more accurately reflects the composition of society and is needed in order to strengthen democracy and to promote its proper functioning. It is not enough to publicly pledge our solidarity and support for women. We must clear all existing challenges towards women's development in order to ensure their ascendance to leadership positions, so the ones they so well deserve. Women must be encouraged as leaders and architects of their own developmental needs. And of course, in the course of that, women need financial resources in order for them to be empowered to do some of the things which they are expected by society to do. Equality in political decision-making performs a leverage function without which it is highly unlikely that a real integration of the equality dimension in government policy making is feasible. In this respect, women's equal participation in political life plays a pivotal role in the general process of the advancement of women. Your Excellencies, women's equal participation in decision-making is not only a demand for simple justice or democracy, but can also be seen as a necessary condition for women's interests to be taken into account. Without the active participation of women and the incorporation of women's perspective at all levels of decision-making, the goals of equality, development, and peace cannot be achieved. Considering that women constitute more than half of the global population, the struggle for gender equality and women-led development should be regarded as a societal struggle. The continuous oppression of women, who constitute the majority in our society, is shame and a reflection of a sick society. It is calamity which should be equally addressed by both men and women. Women don't need favors from men, but they need a leveled and unbiased playing field where skills and capacity would be a determining factor for progress and advancement instead of gender. Equally, women do not need to be patronized. And I think it's one thing which is very important, because sometimes in the course of pushing for women's empowerment and struggles, people think that we want to be patronized. Inequality between men and women remains a challenge which affects women's empowerment and participation in all spheres of life. This inequality is particularly visible in power and decision-making arenas which continue to be dominated by men. In most societies around the world, women hold only a minority of decision-making positions in public and private institutions. And I think at this point I should say that one of the things, the areas which are critical that we should always be talking about, and what it is that we can do to resolve the problem, is the problem of girl child. A girl child has a right. It is not a privilege for a girl child to be allowed to go to school. And I think that it's a matter which repeatedly, when we meet at such assembly, we should always take resolutions that girl children have a right to education. It is a universal right. Now, gender equality is a right. Fulfilling the right is the best chance we have in meeting some of the most pressing challenges of our time, from economic crisis and lack of health care to climate change, violence against women, and escalating conflicts. The 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and its 17 Sustainable Development Goals, adopted by world leaders in 2015, embodies a roadmap for progress that is sustainable and leaves no one behind. Therefore, achieving gender equality and women's empowerment is integral to each of the 17 goals. Only by ensuring the rights of women and girls across all the goals will we get to justice and inclusion, economies that work for all, and sustaining our shared environment now and for future generations. Christine Lagarde says, when he talks about daring the difference, the 3 L's of women's empowerment, she says, and she's the president of the European Union Central Bank, she reminds us that we need a 21st century mentality for women's economic participation. We need to flush away the notion of an ingrained gender inequality. We need to dare the differences, close quote. Now, to dare means to take risks, to step out of our comfortable zones, to let hope extinguish fear, and courage to conquer timidity. Ultimately, daring the difference means wedging open the door to the contribution of women, their learning, their labor, and their leadership. So the 3 L's of women's empowerment are those. As I step down, Chair, the old African adage states, if you educate a boy, you train a man. If you educate a child, you empower the village. Time for talking is over. Let's take practical steps, including vigorous implementation of policies and existing legislations, to ensure that we don't only support women's development, but we create and allow them space to define and lead our development. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Her Excellency.